Is it that Republicans fear Trump so much, but they agree with you privately? Are they just talking about that for a minute?
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's it. That's it in a nutshell. I don't think my colleagues are happy about covering up for pedophiles, but that's what's happening. And it's so sick and twisted. The reason they're doing it is because they're terrified of President Trump's political machine. He's also gone as far as to say, oh, this could endanger the survivors. But that's false. Every survivor was asked, do you support the Massie's legislation? And they all raised their hand.
What is your price? Because if your price is not your life, then you are for sale. Welcome back to the Price is My Life podcast. Today we are off location live in Washington, D.C., and I'm with Congressman Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie, an MIT-trained engineer, inventor, farmer, and one of the most independent voices in Washington, coming fresh off the heels of his press conference yesterday with Jeffrey Epstein survivors, representing Kentucky's 4th district since 2012. He's known as Mr. No. Is it Dr. No or Mr. No?
Mr. No.
Mr. No. For his willingness to stand alone against trillion-dollar spending bills, government overreach, and even presidents from his own party, own political party. From building a solar-powered off-grid farm to leading the bipartisan push to release the Epstein Files, Massie has lived his life by principle, regardless of what you think about him. Liberty isn't negotiable to him, even when it comes at a cost. Congressman, thank you for the Price is My Life podcast. We have like 30 minutes. Usually it's 3 hours, so we're going to do lightning round. How do you think it went yesterday?
I was told it's the biggest press conference on Capitol Hill in the last 5 years. So we had several major networks carry it. Most importantly, the survivors had a platform, and nobody can call this a hoax anymore. I was shocked myself. I was hoping the survivors would compel my colleagues to co-sponsor my effort to release these files. But what I found out is it emboldened me to redouble my efforts because I was driven to tears, really, listening to their stories.
And you know, I watched the press conference. I was physically there. I was walking around. I did know.
Were you wearing a disguise? Were you the blonde?
Actually, I did have a wig.
Okay.
I did have a wig. I was not physically in the gaggle with you. I was off to the side, and I released a video about it yesterday. There was a lot of, you know, left-wing agitator types there, believe all women, and talking about Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh, and I just noticed a lot of what I would characterize as like liberal activists, maybe perhaps using that to their advantage. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we had the bicycle barricades set up. I'm only responsible for what happened inside of the bicycle barricades. Like, there are people claiming that other people at our press conference, and he even spoke from the microphone. All we had speaking there were three members of Congress, myself, my colleague Ro Khanna, and my colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene, the 10 survivors, and 2 of their attorneys.
And what do you think is going to happen? Are people going to sign on to this?
I'm almost certain we're going to get to 218 signatures. That's the threshold we need to force a vote on this. And at that point, they're going to hate me for breathing air up here, because Republican members of Congress are going to have to choose which version of Donald Trump they want. Do they want the Donald Trump who ran for office and his vice president who said they would release the files and his attorney general who said they would release the files? Or do they want the Donald Trump who says now it's a hostile act if anybody co-sponsors my resolution?
In short, why is the president taking that approach?
I think he has rich and powerful friends who maybe they're not going to be indicted when this is released, but they'll be embarrassed. And I also think there's a person in his administration who's going to be embarrassed, Acosta, who was part of the first plea deal.
That was the U.S. attorney?
Yeah, he was the U.S. attorney when Epstein got off easy and then recommitted all these crimes. Like, there are hundreds of victims because Epstein basically went back to his predatory ways after he got that light sentence. So I think that's part of it. And finally, there's government intelligence. Epstein had ties to that, and I don't think the American people are ready to, they're not going to accept lightly the fact that this guy who was a pedophile was working with our own intelligence agencies and those of foreign countries.
This is James O'Keefe. You know me for exposing the truth and holding the powerful accountable. But today, I want to talk to you about protecting your own freedom, starting with your finances. Right now, the warning signs are everywhere. The Fed continues to print money, interest rates and inflation remain high, and everywhere you look, your hard-earned money just doesn't go as far as it used to. That's not your imagination, it's today's reality. If central banks are loading up on gold, why not you? That's why I've now partnered with American Independence Gold. They're veteran-owned, and proceeds from every sale go to Tunnel to Towers, supporting our first responders and heroes. And listen, right now, the first 50 customers get a $1,000 credit towards their account. That's right, $1,000 to help you get started protecting your wealth with real, physical gold. Don't wait for the next crisis. Go to O'KeefeMediaGold.com, that's OKEEFE MediaGold.com, or 833-324-GOLD. Again, that's O'KeefeMediaGold.com or 833-324-GOLD. Take action, get the facts, and protect your future, because freedom isn't given, it's secured. This is James O'Keefe. Don't just watch history, own a piece of it. We released a tape. We are about to release a tape. As of the time of this filming, it hasn't been released yet, and I just want to get your reaction. This is a guy named Joseph Schnitt, acting deputy chief inside the DOJ, and I'm just going to play a clip here.
They'll redact every Republican or conservative person in those files, leave all the liberal, Democratic people in those files.
I think they visited that Maxwell person.
Yeah.
And also involved.
Got transferred to a minimum security prison too recently, which is against BOP policy because she's a convicted sex offender. They're offering her something to keep it on shut.
That was the acting. Okay, so that was someone high up in the DOJ saying they're offering Ghislaine Maxwell something to keep her mouth shut, saying the Epstein files do exist, saying there's thousands of files and they'll redact every Republican person. This guy is pretty credible because he works in the Office of Enforcement Operations. He's kind of an intel guy in the DOJ, working with the Bureau of Prisons. What's your reaction to that?
When was that filmed, roughly?
About a month ago.
Yeah, well, he's right, I think. Well, I mean, why would he be lying, first of all, if he didn't know he was being taped? But it's turned out he's right because the DOJ has released some files. First, the Attorney General said there's nothing left but child porn in their possession. When, after she released the Phase 1 binders, Pam Bondi. Well, since then, just recently in the last week, the DOJ has released thousands of pages, but what they've done is to heavily redact all of those pages. So they're taking out the names, as it seems like he predicts there. And also yesterday we heard from survivors who said basically the same thing about Maxwell, that she was getting a light sentence and that you couldn't trust anything that she says because of that. I think she is getting a light sentence. It's almost as suspect as Jeffrey Epstein killing himself in his cell. This is even more suspect because it's not a conspiracy theory. We know it's happening. And you got somebody there inside of the DOJ who's admitting that it's highly unusual and unprecedented.
One of the criticisms, I was watching the reaction to what you did yesterday, and a lot of the people say we have our own list. Some of the victims said that, right? We have and we're going to release it ourselves. One of the questions people have was why wouldn't they just release that right away, or even at your press conference?
Yeah, they addressed that at the press conference. Somebody asked them, and their first answer is, why do we have to release the list? Why won't the government release it?
On principle, they're saying the government should do it on principle.
The government should do it because they're responsible for enforcing the law. The victims aren't responsible for enforcing the law. But the biggest reason they're not releasing the list, and I think I have a solution to this that came up at the press conference yesterday, but the biggest reason they're not releasing it is they could be sued into homelessness, like for defamation. So let's say they accuse somebody of something and then the government doesn't prosecute it, and they can't get all of this materials and discovery and whatnot. So then they get the countersuits happen, which has happened to these victims, and then they get blamed and they get defamed, and it's not worth their time. They also get threatened. They get followed by cars, around their neighborhoods. They get intimidated. So when they said they're going to compile their own list, they said we don't have plans to release it. My colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene stepped up to the microphone and reminded America that members of Congress have something in the Constitution called speech or debate immunity that's been rarely used, but it's always enforced, which is to say we can't be sued for anything we say on the floor of the House. So Marjorie Taylor Greene came up with the idea of if the victims have a list, we'll go to the floor and read the list, and we can't be sued or prosecuted for it. And I talked to Marjorie about that after the press conference, and we've got some ideas for doing that.
Do you think that just speak for a moment about the dynamic here, because this is a weird dynamic. You're not anti-Trump, or I suppose
no, I endorsed him for president.
So, but is it that Republicans fear Trump so much, but they agree with you privately? How they just talk about that for a minute?
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's it. That's it in a nutshell. I don't think my colleagues are happy about covering up for pedophiles, but that's what's happening. And it's so sick and twisted. The reason they're doing it is because they're terrified of President Trump's political machine. Not just his legislative affairs folks are reaching out from the White House to every Republican member of Congress who might think about co-sponsoring this. They're getting calls from the political machine that Donald Trump runs. We've got members of Congress who have aspirations of running for statewide office, and they can't win a statewide office in a Republican primary with Donald Trump on the other side. So they're terrified of him. With three big exceptions, 3 women have co-sponsored this resolution: Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace.
Why aren't they terrified of President Trump?
I think, number one, because they're women, they feel obligated to take up for the women who've been abused. And number two, I think it's harder for the president to go after a woman who's taking up for women. He's been able to intimidate the men into not taking up for the survivors. There's something else going on here too, which is the Speaker of the House is offering political cover for everybody to be part of this ruse. Yesterday, we voted on a resolution that's meaningless, that does nothing, but it supports basically what's already happening in the Oversight Committee. And he told all the Republicans in a private meeting yesterday, this will give you political cover back home. When you don't support Massie's resolution, which is the real one, by the way, I've got this placebo one. Now, he didn't call it a placebo, but I've got this other one that you can vote for and you'll have cover. So that is going on. Plus you have the Speaker of the House trying to use his bully pulpit to convince members of Congress that there's something defective about my legislation. Here's what's ironic about that. When the Speaker created his fake version, he copied 3 pages directly from my legislation that we wrote right here in this office. So at the same time, he's poo-pooing the way my legislation was drafted. He's copied it and taken the teeth out of it. So that's giving a fig leaf for the other members of Congress and a reason. They're saying, oh, it's defective legislation. He's also gone as far as to say, oh, this could endanger the survivors. But that's false, because yesterday at my press conference, every survivor was asked, do you support Massie's legislation? And they all raised their hand. Why would they support my legislation if it's not good for them? They even had their lawyers present who's looked at our legislation.
So what's the next thing that needs to happen here? What happens next?
I need to get 218 signatures.
How many do you have right now?
I have 214. I'll probably get 2 in the next week, and I think I'll get 2 more in the next 2 weeks. We'll get to 218. At that point, there's 7 days, legislative days that have to pass, and then on the 7th day, Speaker Johnson has a 2-day window. He can either bring it up, then, or he can wait 2 days, but he's got to have a vote on this. There's one trick he can do. He can try to change the rules of the House. See, I'm using the rules as they are written, which says if you can get 218 signatures on something, you can bypass the Speaker. He could get the Rules Committee to change the rules mid-Congress. But if he does that, he's got to get 218 votes for that trickery. That becomes the vote of record of hiding the Epstein Files. So he's kind of boxed in here. Now, another thing could happen is the Senate could just refuse to pass this when it goes to the Senate. Because to make this binding legislation, to make it legally a law that the DOJ has to comply with, it has to go through both chambers.
So the women can be sued, but you can't be sued. You
Correct.
were citing, what were you citing earlier?
The speech or debate clause that's in the Constitution. And the reason the founders put that in there, it sounds kind of not very populist, right? That there's a special super First Amendment for congressmen, but the founders put that in the Constitution because the king would always punish members of parliament. Like he would convict them for things they said. If they said anything bad about the king, he could arrest them for their words, or people would sue them into oblivion. It might not sound like a good thing at first that you let congressmen lie if they want to. I'm not proposing to lie, by the way, but somebody could use the speech or debate clause to do that.
But how could, you're paying a price for this, and you're going to continue to, I assume. What is the price you're going to pay? Is it they're coming after you for your re-election and the billionaires are funding your opponents? Like, what is the price you think that you're really going to have to pay for this?
$20 million of negative ads in my congressional district.
Does that matter to your voters there?
It could. I mean, it's going to leave a mark. So there are 3 billionaires right now. You know, you said, what's the price you're going to pay? Let me tell you the price I've already paid. There's 3 billionaires. 2 of them are hedge fund managers, and one of them's a casino mogul. One of them's in Epstein's black book, John Paulson. They've spent over $2 million running negative ads about me. Not about the Epstein issue. It's on things like flag burning. They say, oh, Massie is a bad dude because he says flag burning's protected by the First Amendment, and they try to make a negative ad out of that. I'm just siding with Antonin Scalia, like the best person who's ever been in the Supreme Court, you know, in modern day. But those are the kind of ads they run to try to diminish my reputation in my district and get me defeated.
Is that working?
It has some effect on low information voters. I don't think it's affecting the base of support that I have back home. But that's the price you pay.
Because like you said, it's not the whole country. It's just a very tiny fraction of people in a very specific place.
Right.
It's a big difference in those dynamics.
Well,
right?
and then the other price I pay is my consultants that you need, you know, to win an election. They're leaving me because they're being intimidated by Trump's political machine. You know the old line, you'll never do business in this town if you support this dude. That's literally being told to consultants that I would otherwise hire to help me win this election.
My assumption is that if a congressman here had worn a hidden camera over the last 10, 15 years, the things that I would see and hear would shock the conscience.
There's one other thing that's going on when we talk about all the ways you can be punished for speaking out. My fundraising in DC has dried up so much that my fundraiser gave up.
You're fundraising in DC.
Yeah. So, you know, if there's PAC money, which almost every member gets PAC money up here, my fundraiser said your prospects of getting PAC money are so dismal, you should just quit raising money in DC.
Do you ever find just being you that once in a while you're just like, this is really, really hard. I can't do this anymore. This is just too tough. Do you ever feel that way?
I think it's the opposite. If they ever quit attacking me, I might say, well, this is kind of boring. When they attack me, I feel obligated to win because I know I'm over the target. The dogs don't bark at parked cars, we say back in Kentucky. They wouldn't be spending $20 million. You can't hold two thoughts in your head simultaneously. You can't say Massie is ineffective in Washington, D.C., and then also observe that they're spending $20 million against me to get me out of D.C. It's the reason they're doing that is I am effective. The press conference we had yesterday was the biggest one up here in 5 years.
Biggest press conference in Washington.
Yeah,
Is that
on
because of all
Capitol
the number of press people there, or how does that measure?
The number of cameras, the number that were there, the number of networks that carried it live.
And a lot of them are just trying to get a political, cudgel against Trump, probably, right? Or
some of the Democrats are, but that's a distraction. I don't think the president himself is implicated in any of these files. If he were, Joe Biden probably would have released these files.
That's what I asked these protesters. They didn't have a good answer for that, by the way.
So this isn't about Donald Trump. It's about people who are actually richer than Donald Trump and have a lot of influence because they give money.
Do people go up to you privately and, like I said, just say, like, I agree with you, like in this building, hey, I keep doing what you're doing, but I can't talk about it. Does that ever happen to you?
It happens every week.
Happens every week.
Yeah. People are like...
And you have to protect their confidence. You have to protect their anonymity because they're confiding in you that they secretly support you, but they don't want to say so publicly, for example, right?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to say that, then they would never confide in me again. And those are my closest friends.
Your closest friends.
Only, your enemies up here don't come and say, I think what you're doing is right, but I just can't be with you. I can't die on this hill. But your friends do.
Do you think that those people, without naming any names, do you think that they should be more brave and say it publicly, or it's just the nature of politics or the nature of human nature that you can't be public with that?
I mean, obviously, I would like for them to join me. For some of them, the political reality is they would probably lose their reelection if Donald Trump came against them. Some of them are here because they were in a 7-way primary and they got Donald Trump's endorsement, and that was their major redeeming factor in an election where there was no incumbent, so people went with the Trump candidate. And now they're incumbents, but they haven't been here very long, and so they haven't built a trust with their constituents yet. And by the way, I might be losing my next election over this. You have to get in a headspace where you're okay with that. And too many of my colleagues are not okay with losing their next election if that's what it costs. You said, what's the name of your podcast?
Price is My Life.
The Price is My Life. Look, it's not even our life, right? The price is my reelection, I would say.
So you are resolved, or you are okay with that possibility?
Yeah.
Psychologically.
Yeah, and then, when I was at this press conference yesterday with the survivors, I got to thinking, for these survivors, the price is their life. Like, this could ruin their lives by speaking out yesterday. And here we've got members of Congress who won't even take a risk in their next election to do the right thing.
We have 5 minutes before you have to go vote. Again, this is a lightning round of Price is My Life. We could talk for 3 hours.
Sorry if my answers are too long.
No. Maybe we'll have you back in studio at some point. But you and I spoke recently, and you told me a story, and if you could just recount it briefly to the extent you can share, because that was so fascinating, of going inside the SCIF. That's a secure compartmentalized information facility, and I think you were approving budgets, or some of it was classified.
Yeah.
You told me a story about bureaucrats. Can you just recount that story briefly?
So there's a classified annex to the budget. And a lot of my colleagues don't even know this. Like, when they're voting for the classified annex, they don't even know that's what they're voting for. But if you're paying attention, you realize, oh, I've got 1 week, I can go read the classified annex in a SCIF. They don't allow you to bring pen and paper in. They don't allow you to take pen and paper out. You can't bring your phone in. You got to lock it in the locker.
And you can't bring your staff in.
You can't bring your staff in. Imagine, when you get in there, you have no smartphone and you have no smart staff. So it's only your own wits. And And you can't even bring a pencil and paper or a calculator. And they go in, they let you have a sneak peek at this budget, at the classified annex. And it's basically all the clandestine things that the US government does. And I can say this, it's tens of billions of dollars. I can't give you the exact number. And it's mostly code words. And by the way, there's maybe only a dozen out of the 435 people who ever go down and look at this thing.
Code words?
Code words for each of the projects.
Like military projects?
Yeah, like, I don't know, Project Phoenix.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there reading this thing with three, I'll call them members of the committee staff, the Intel committee staff, watching me read this. But they're ostensibly they are there to help me understand it. So I'm reading this and I'm like, what is this Phoenix project that has $5 billion? And the three of them look at each other, the three who are responsible for supervising my observation of the budget, and two of them look at one dude and he looks at them and he gets up and leaves the room. And now there's two left. And he said, well, why did he have to leave the room? Well, Project Phoenix is above his level of classification. So he leaves the room, they bring out another binder that I'm sure most congressmen don't get to this other binder.
Probably 12, you said, going on a 400 or something?
Yeah. So then they open the other binder and they're like, well, here's Project Phoenix. And then, well, within Project Phoenix, there's Project, let's call it Nest Egg. I'm like, well, what's Project Nest Egg? And why is there $1 billion for it? And the two who are left in the room look at each other and one of them leaves and I'm like, let me guess, that the other person couldn't know about Project Nest Egg. Yep. So then they tell me about Project Nest Egg. Now, the only thing I have in there reference is a clock. And before I walked in, I had to remember what my next meeting was, and I'm looking at the clock, and I've played 20 questions just to get down into Project Phoenix. And there's probably more binders if I knew the right words to say, abracadabra, then I could get those binders. But this is how hard it is to know what's actually going on in our government.
Wow. How much time were you in that room for?
Like an hour, and just trying to drill down in one little thing to understand it. Now, when I was doing that, there was another congressman in there with me, and he was like, how'd you know to ask for that? I'm like, well, I don't know. I just thought we should ask about that.
You went to MIT.
Yeah.
This is James O'Keefe. You know me for exposing the truth and holding the powerful accountable. But today, I want to talk to you about protecting your own freedom, starting with your finances. Right now, the warning signs are everywhere. The Fed continues to print money, interest rates and inflation remain high, and everywhere you look, your hard-earned money just doesn't go as far as it used to. That's not your imagination, it's today's reality. If central banks are loading up on gold, why not you? That's why I've now partnered with American Independence Gold. They're veteran-owned, and proceeds from every sale go to Tunnel to Towers, supporting our first responders and heroes. And listen, right now, the first 50 customers get a $1,000 credit towards their account. That's right, $1,000 to help you get started protecting your wealth with real, physical gold. Don't wait for the next crisis. Go to O'KeefeMediaGold.com, that's OKEEFE MediaGold.com, or 833-324-GOLD. Again, that's O'KeefeMediaGold.com or 833-324-GOLD. Take action, get the facts, and protect your future, because freedom isn't given, it's secured. This is James O'Keefe. Don't just watch history, own a piece of it. Well, we're running out of time. I have one more major, that's an insane story. And speaking of redactions, I sent you the FBI raid affidavit in my case, where they literally redacted every single word of the probable cause. That's the justification for the search warrant. In a case where they admitted there was no indictment, there was no crime. They redacted every single word. And it stands to reason that if they can't even be transparent about why they raided a newsroom, why the Department of Justice raided a journalism organization, if they can't even tell you why they did that, it stands to reason they're not going to tell you, what really happened with Jeff Epstein here. So
Not voluntarily.
well, not voluntarily.
And so what's happening right now is they are curating the release of material to the Oversight Committee. And I showed the chairman of the Oversight Committee yesterday the documents he was getting. I'm like, here's the flight log. It's completely redacted. Like, not all of the people on that plane were victims. I said, somebody had to fly the plane. Like, can we at least know who the pilot was? Like, it was crazy.
Is it all just to protect sources and methods? That's my hypothesis.
I think it's to avoid embarrassment for some very rich and powerful people. And I think it is, to some degree, to protect sources and methods of which American people might not approve of if they knew their tax dollars were using those methods.
Very last question, very quickly. What was your favorite moment from your press conference yesterday?
Oh, my favorite moment, I won't call it my favorite moment. I'll tell you what kept me up last night, like sick to my stomach, was when one of the women recanted her story. Actually, two women, one was in Florida and one was in New York. They basically told the same story. When they were 14, somebody in their high school said, hey, you want to go give a rich guy a massage and get $200? He's got a really nice house and all this. And she says, sure. She goes, the door closes with Jeffrey Epstein. He sexually assaults her. He tells her, whenever I call you, you need to come over here and I'll pay you $200 again. And the thing that makes me sick to my stomach is eventually he said, you got to go back to your high school and bring me another 14-year-old. And the girl admitted that she did it because, and she got $200 for doing it, but she didn't have to get sexually abused if she would bring him somebody else. So not only was there evil being perpetrated on her, she was convinced to do evil or forced to do evil. I think that's disgusting. And then what else we learned, this is very close to that same thing, is that once they got to be like 16 or 17 or 18, they were too old for Jeffrey Epstein. And he would farm them out to friends, not all of them, but some of them. He would facilitate other people to have sex with, sexually abuse them. This gets to the heart of this matter. Okay, there are two things that went really bad in the Epstein case. Number one, he got off with a very light sentence and then committed these heinous acts to hundreds of kids. Like, before this press conference, I wondered, should I be calling him a pedophile? Or were these like older, girls? No, he was a pedophile. He didn't even want them once they got to the legal age of consent. So two things went really bad. For some reason, and Acosta himself, who works in the Trump administration now, said back when he was the prosecutor that Epstein was tied to government intelligence. Okay, but for some reason they let him go back out and recommit these things. And then the other thing that's really bad about this situation, which is what I want to get to, is it wasn't just Maxwell and Epstein who committed these crimes. There were other people involved. There were people that facilitated it. There were people who participated in it. And none of them have seen one day in jail. And a lot of those are still out there. And the DOJ wants you to believe they don't know who they are. That's preposterous. That's like, if you're an American and you're saying, and I have some colleagues who say this, they say, man, I just hear all that and my mind goes blank because I hear it so much. I'm tired of it. Let's move on. But if that's your mindset, you need to understand that the U.S. government has let criminals go free, Epstein at first, and then others still now, because, and the argument right now is for why they can't release these files is there are people in there who were associated with Jeffrey Epstein who shouldn't have to be embarrassed by being in a release of information. The problem is, within that list of people that they think shouldn't be embarrassed are actual criminals who should be prosecuted. And so one of the objections to releasing all this material, once you get past the fact that we are going to protect the victims, one of the objections is this embarrassment thing, but we got to get over that. We got to get all this out there and let people sort through, okay, this guy knew Jeffrey Epstein because he funded the scholarship that Epstein gave, right? Whereas this guy was a sexual predator. And I think that we can get to the bottom of that.
Thank you, Congressman, for your time today.
Thank you, James.
What is your price? Because if your price is not your life, then you are for sale.